Hi everyone, welcome to our second AB Vote Hangout. I'm Mac Mail, better known probably online to most of you as Master Mac. I write about urban affairs here in Edmonton, and looking forward to a conversation tonight with Laurie and Dave and Ryan. Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan Hastman, and I work at the University of Alberta, and I am the conservative of this panel, and I look forward to your questions tonight. So if you're on Twitter, please use hashtag ABVote or ABLedge.
And hi, my name is Dave Cornway. I write the political blog known as daveberta.ca, and I tweet at Dave Cornway. So I hope you're sending in lots of questions using the AB Vote hashtag tonight. And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome our special guest tonight, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion tonight with her. I'd like to welcome Laurie Blakeman to the Google Hangout. Laurie is the MLA for Edmonton Centre and has served as the MLA for Edmonton Centre since 1997. She's currently the Liberal House Leader in the Alberta Legislature and serves in a number of critic roles. So I guess without further ado, I'd like to welcome Laurie. Laurie, if you'd like to, I would welcome you to say a few words about yourself and maybe talk a little bit about your big announcement this week.
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me onto this forum. I've never done it before, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to a wider group of people. My name is Laurie Blakeman. I am the MLA for the fabulous constituency of Edmonton Centre. And last week was my hat trick week. On Tuesday, the government did an about face and accepted all of the things that I wanted them to do with my Bill 202, and they amended it and put it into their Bill 10, and I helped them get it passed, and we went back into committee, amended everything, passed it out of committee, and out a third done deal. So I got everything I was trying to get, which was a huge success, historic even, in that an opposition member got the government to do a complete about face with legislation. And it's obviously a win for me, but a bigger win for the folks out there in Alberta. The next day was my 18th anniversary as an MLA for being elected to the Alberta Legislature, so I have to ask, but I should be entitled to drink on the floor now, but at a minimum to vote, seeing as I've reached the age of majority as an MLA. And on Friday, I announced that I had sought and got the nominations for 3 different political parties to run as a candidate in the fabulous constituency of Edmonton Centre as the official candidate for the Alberta Liberal Party, the Alberta Party, and the Green Party, which went very well and caused a bigger stir than I was anticipating. So I think that's what we're here tonight to talk about is, and I'm looking forward to that because I was talking to a young guy this afternoon, and he said he was starting to feel really down about politics and what's the point, and my vote never counts for anything. And he said when he heard what I'd done, it just gave him a boost, and now he was kind of more interested and feeling a lot better about whether he could have an influence on politics in Alberta, and that is what I was trying to do. I'm playing a long game here, but I think what I'm looking for is the 49% of the people that don't vote, and particularly the 18 to 34-year-olds that have not started to vote, mostly because I think what we're offering them isn't very attractive, and I'm trying to figure out how to make that more attractive to them and get them involved in politics so that there's some succession planning, because the people that taught me are getting old and I will eventually leave, and I need newer people, younger people, to know how to get people elected, and preferably, no offense, Ryan, get people elected that are progressive and on the center left side of the spectrum. So that's me.
Great. So I think many people called your Friday announcement certainly unexpected, and I think I saw the word unusual thrown out a few times. And you've talked a little bit about how you want to play the long game, but why does it matter? Why does what you announced matter to the average voter?
I think in a small way I was able to show that it can be done, which there was some question as to whether that was even possible, and it clearly is. That wasn't hard. I just approached each group and said, I'd like to run for your nomination. How do I do that? And each one is different. I didn't know that until I got into it. But that wasn't hard. And what I see out there is people that have lost faith that their vote matters, that there is a progressive vote. A lot of people are really irritated that we've got all these splinter parties on the left that just can't seem to get their shit together and offer. I'm sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Absolutely, we're on the internet.
There's no
Okay.
CRTC here.
Well, yeah. When I got elected, I thought my language would clean up, but it didn't. So, they're irritated that there's all these splinter groups all fighting for their own bit of the turf and consistently, well, not consistently, in certain ridings, splitting the vote so that we end up with a conservative coming up the middle. And it should, by rights, be a progressive riding, or at least a much more of a progressive vote. So it's to give people hope. It's to show them that it can be done. It is about succession planning. And based on conversations I'm having today, there's more people in Alberta that are now looking at this. I've talked to two of them today that are going, well, how do I get hold of this group or that group, because I think I might try for their nomination at the same time. So if we can share scarce resources, then this has definitely been worthwhile.
Okay, maybe I'll ask one follow-up, and then I'll hand off to maybe Dave for the next question. But a question that I saw on Twitter today, and one of the first things I thought too was, that makes sense, bringing the progressive vote together, but why no NDP, or what's the story with the NDP?
Oh, well, they, I mean, it's no secret. I really admire and enjoy working with the ND MLAs that are in the House. They certainly bought me a number of glasses of wine, for which I'm very grateful. But it wasn't quite the right fit, and they have also been very clear that they were not interested in collaboration, cooperation, coalitions, or mergers in any way, shape, or form. Thank you very much. Go away. And I respect that, and I am honoring their position. So that's why they're not involved. They didn't want to be.
So Lori, you've been an MLA since 1997, and you've been a Liberal since 1997. You've seen a number of premiers. You've seen a number of Liberal leaders. What went wrong with the Liberal Party to put you in this situation, to make this decision? I mean, obviously, at one point you would have seen the Liberal Party in Alberta as a viable opposition or a viable alternative. I guess the big question is, there's been this sense for a number of years that the Liberal Party wasn't going anywhere, wasn't going to form government by itself, or as a political movement, it wasn't really galvanizing, or there was no real momentum there. What went wrong, and I don't know if you could explain how what you're doing is going to be different than what the Liberal Party's been doing for the past few years.
Dave, that's going to take more than an hour. What went wrong? Well, I think that after 2008, it was clear that we just weren't speaking to people in Alberta. They weren't. They were pretty happy. They were earning good money. They had a brand new pickup or car in the driveway. They wanted things to be different, but they didn't want things to change. And that's really hard to fight against. And there's been a long, sort of sad list of changes that the Conservatives have been able to make in parliamentary process and in resource allocation for opposition caucuses that just makes it bloody hard to go up against them. All the decks are all stacked in their favor, and I don't mean to sound whiny, but that is significant. You know, when you can't hire enough researchers to do the work you need to do, then that becomes meaningful in a larger sense to the public interest in Alberta. And that's my biggest motivation, is I am really worried that we will come out of the next election with 80 plus Conservative seats and not enough people in the opposition to actually hold up the opposition end, to be able to do the work. You know, at one point we had 30 MLAs in opposition. Well, you've now got 14 of us all combined in the opposition doing the same amount of work with half of us and half the resources. And anybody that wants to complain that we're not staying on top of things, that's why. There aren't enough hours in the day to do that. So I need more progressive MLAs elected, and that's why I thought I don't need to run again. But I decided to run again because I want to see more progressive MLAs elected. So that's the short game against the Tories, so that we can do things in the best interests of Albertans, and in the long game to get somebody else in government beside the Tories. Did that answer your question?
Well, sort of. I mean, I guess looking after the next election, you say you're playing the long game, and I mean, I think the long game is what's needed to change government in this province. That's sad to say after we've had the same government for 44 years. That'll be another long game. But what do you have in mind for after the next election? So say, you know, the next election is called in the next few weeks. You're re-elected in April under this multi-party coalition banner. What happens after the next election? Do you have an idea of a new party forming? Would you run for the leadership of this party? What do you see? What do you see this actually translating into in, say, 2 months from now, after the election?
There's a couple of things. One is we don't know how we're going to come out of this next election, and I think it's really fluid. I think based on the reaction that I got from Friday to now, there's great possibility out there, just super possibility, huge opportunity to work, to get people energized and working on a progressive vote in any way they care to do it. So yes, when you come out of that election, you're looking to work with what you've got. If there's 3 Liberals and 1 Alberta Party and 1 Green and 2 Wild Rose, I'm going to try and get the progressive people together in a coalition so that we have party status in the House. We've got a leader in the House. We've got, you know, all of that kind of stuff that makes a difference over there. You get leaders' questions, blah, blah, blah. But I think on I guess on a personal basis, but where I'd like to see us go is using social media as a way of reconnecting with people on a very immediate basis for feedback on what we're doing. So I used social media very deliberately to engage people to help me move forward that GSA issue. And I was very specific about you must contact your MLA. Sending a tweet doesn't mean anything. Send them an email, stop in the street and talk to them, contact them by phone. And people did because it changed what was happening, and that's why it changed. And they came to hearings and they expressed themselves. So people want to be involved, and they don't want to be involved at the end. They want to be involved as it develops. So, and I've tried it. As an MLA, you can have that kind of instant feedback loop on the issues that you're working on the floor. Not perfect, but a lot better than never talking to people. And I think that's one of the directions that we need to go as we change. I think people aren't that incredibly interested in political parties and the limitations they have. I think we have a new generation that works issue-based, and they come together to work on an issue, very excited about it, they do a lot of work on it, and then they blow apart, and some of them will reform somewhere else on a different issue, and other ones will reform in a different place on yet a third issue. And that keeps happening, so those clusters reform and then blow apart and reform. And as politicians, we need to learn to work with that and capture that as we try and move legislation through. Boy, I hope that made sense. So I think there's things we can do as political parties. I think there's things that we can do in how we interrelate with the people in Alberta. And obviously, if I'm going to be getting different parties together, yeah, we would need, if we're going to actually form a coalition, then based on what the grassroots wants, because that's where it happens, the leadership only has one vote each. It's not about the leaders. It's about whether people are willing to follow them and how much support they're going to give them. So this is where the grassroots really has power to put the people they want in the positions to move forward.
Well, I'm glad you talked about that, Lori, because that actually is a good segue to what I was going to bring up. This isn't the first time that people have changed or brought different nominations together. There's a federal precedent, and then there was the Wild Rose precedent. But one of the criticisms, at least in the Wild Rose one, was that the members really weren't consulted. Now, they're facing actual nominations, to the PC party's credit, so it may be, they may find, reconciliation that way. But I'm just curious about the process. Were the members of the Liberals, the Greens, and the Alberta Party in Edmonton Centre consulted on this, or was it more at the leadership level?
Oh no, that's where I went. Now, I mean, to be fair, for example, with the Alberta Party, there are members in Edmonton Centre. They're not really active. I did go there. I phoned the party. I said, "Who's the local rep?" Turned out to be a neighbor. Contacted him. We talked back and forth, and he said, we're not really set up to do this. And he referred me kind of up one level to a regional person, and then it went from there. So that was the point, is that I couldn't convince the Liberals to go there on a party basis. So I went there on a grassroots basis, on an Edmonton Centre only basis. So that's the whole point. It was about that level first, and then we worked our way up as each one's process worked.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't claim to understand any of the parties to the left of the spectrum, but as an outsider and kind of a political observer, I mean, first of all, there's a reason you've survived as an elected Liberal with the big L in Alberta for a while. You're a very effective politician. I think you're probably bigger than all three of those parties, which leads me to one of my questions. There's a certain nobility to what you're doing because you are more credible than any of those other three brands. But again, as an outsider and no fan of the NDP, when I look at the parties and I see momentum, multiple seats, just the general intangibles, the NDP seems pretty strong to me. And the other part of that is I'm not sure what you and Rachel Notley disagree on. So maybe you could shed some light on those of us. I'm kind of happy to see the splits, just being a little bit facetious, but as a partisan, it's worked out well for the Conservative side. So I don't understand, I think it's noble that you would do this, but B, where's the NDP in this? I know Mac mentioned it, but help me understand why they wouldn't want to work with Laurie Blakeman.
Well, they did if Laurie Blakeman became an ND. And they certainly offered that to me a number of times.
Wouldn't you want to be in the official opposition? You could have been House Leader of, they might be looking at 8, 9, 10 seats.
I guess, I don't know. I am a Liberal. I seriously considered it a number of times. My hesitation was the long game, and I don't want to insult anyone in the NDs because I think they're very valuable. The problem is, no matter what I do, I cannot convince a lot of Albertans that I talk to that the NDs are ever going to form government. And I want, no offense, Ryan, but I want the Tories gone. And I need people that are going to form government to do that. And the NDs are never going to be voted in by Albertans to be government. I think they will win seats in Edmonton, maybe Calgary. I hope Shannon Phillips gets in Lethbridge. They're all good people. But I don't see any change in the rest of Alberta in ever voting in an ND government in Alberta. And I need a progressive government that is going to turf them. That's why.
Cool. I want to jump in with a question from Graham Thompson's piece in the Journal about the announcement itself, and I think a lot of people saw that the question was raised about the news conference in the legislature. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I honestly have to, it's in my list of things to do, to go back and check that, because I went ahead with it because I thought I was within the rules. And I know that Brian Mason had done his press conference from there, so I figured I was okay. I mean, it wasn't a partisan in that sense, it was tripartisan. And I thought it was in the interests of, I mean, the media love it because they've got their feeds and they can plug in and they get better sound quality, and the camera guys are all set up, and they're not wild when they have to go and yank everything and go and stand out in the wind and try and get a good recording. So I'm conscious of that, and I'm trying to make their lives easier, not more difficult. I thought I was abiding by the rules, and I'm not sure that I wasn't, so I still have to go and check that. I just haven't had time today.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't raise anything in the article about what the specific rule was, so I'm not sure. And I get what you're saying about the mics. I've certainly been in those news conferences where the audio guys are swearing and complaining because they can't plug in, but
yeah,
I did see it raised there, so
they're wrapping their mics up, and yeah. But I have to go figure out where you find that out, because I don't know whose rule this is. So it's a bit of checking around for me to actually get to the bottom of this. And if I did wrong, I apologize, but I didn't think I was doing wrong.
I think there's 4 Albertans who actually care about that kind of thing. And I don't.
Maybe one of our faithful viewers has the answer and can send it to us. If you're watching, we're taking questions using the AB Vote hashtag on Twitter. Ryan, do you want to jump in with one of those Twitter questions?
Well, it's going to sound like it's from me, and it's not. But Danny W. asks, 2 parts. Doesn't it reason that if there was a will for a Liberal-led progressive party in Alberta, there would have been one by now? And can one contrive a political will from that history of voting?
Well, I don't assume that it's Liberal-led. I'm just trying to get us through the election and see what there is to work with on the other side. And this is where my party and I disagreed, because I felt action needed to be taken before the election, and I don't blame them because they're trying to organize an election campaign, and that would be #1 stressful next to giving birth, I suspect. But I felt it was important to do something before. I don't know what it's going to look like on the other side. I have experience and skills that can help knit this together, but I don't assume that it's Liberal-led. May not be. I'll work with what I get. Progressive is what I'm looking for. And I'm sorry, the second part was, why would I think this would happen when it hasn't happened in the past? Because I don't think that Alberta, there's this myth that if you're Albertan, you're Tory, that all Albertans are Tory. And one, that isn't true, because we had on average, 50% of the people vote in the last election, and 30% of the total vote voted Tory. So, number one, not all Albertans vote Tory. We have a huge chunk of people that don't vote at all, and that's a bigger problem, I think. So how are we not engaging them? And I don't assume that they are a silent majority in favor of the Tories. I assume they could be anything, and I'm going to go try and get them. And there's, I don't want to get into a lot of parliamentary process wonky stuff, but these Tories have changed the rules a lot. Just a simple example, when I was first elected, we could debate for actually an unlimited amount of time. Then it was cut to half an hour, then to 20 minutes. Now we're cut to 15 minutes. So, and at the same time, the government is combining more and more bills together. So today, we had a first reading for a statutes amendment bill which has 4 bills inside of it. So now I have 15 minutes to try and debate a bill that's actually 4 different acts in 15 minutes. So how am I doing well by Albertans with the combination of those two things? Less speaking time for me and more stuff rolled together in bills by the Tories. That isn't good. In the budget debates, in supplementary supply, I got, the way it's structured, I got 20 minutes, half to the minister, half to me, to debate a supplementary supply that was well over $1 billion with 14 departments. How is that possible? I mean, you cannot realistically have a meaningful debate about why they chose to do certain things in certain ways for 14 different departments and over $1 billion in 10 minutes of exchange with a minister. So those are some of the changes that have happened that really affect and make it very difficult for opposition to do their job. And I keep saying them, don't shit in that nest because you could be there, but I don't think it ever crosses their mind that they could be there. And frankly, so far they haven't been, so it's just been me.
So, Lori, I'm going to jump just back to the politics of things, looking at the upcoming election. On my blog, I keep an ongoing list of nomination candidates. So I track in every constituency across the province, who's running for which party nomination where. Now, in Edmonton Centre, you're the Liberal Alberta Party and Green Party candidate, and that's great for you in Edmonton Centre. But I'm just wondering, what if, say, I'm a progressive Albertan, and I'm living in another constituency, and where there would be an Alberta Party, a Green Party, a Liberal Party candidate, and a New Democratic Party candidate voting, all running against each other. What should I do? In Edmonton Centre, obviously, it's more of a unique situation. You'll be running against a New Democrat candidate, but the other parties won't be running candidates against you. So, uniting the progressive vote in that case might be easier in a riding like Edmonton Centre. But if I'm in another riding, how would you think? Like, who are you going to be cheering for? Essentially, is what I'm saying in other rides.
Well, that's interesting. I've never been a fan of the strategic vote because I've always felt that people should vote for who they believed in and who they wanted to see as their representative. And that doesn't always jive with the idea of a strategic vote. On the other hand, that hasn't worked out so well for us on the progressive side. So I think people do need to look at who they've got and who's most likely to win. And that would be my advice. So I guess if we call that a strategic vote, then yes, I've changed my mind. But I think people need to vote for the one they think is most likely to win and try and combine that. The other thing I would suggest is if you can't, there's more than your vote. There's your time and your money. And if you want to see something happen, either in your own constituency or in another one, put your resources into that. This is where the population drives things, and every candidate needs volunteers and money, and that has a lot to do with who wins. So if you want to see a progressive candidate win, go work for them and donate your money to them, because even $100 is better than a kick in the ass with a frozen boot.
So I know a couple weeks ago, last week or the week before, I think you tweeted, or someone tweeted, that you were at in Edmonton Gold Bar. You were at Christina Stasia's, who's the Alberta Party candidate in Edmonton Gold Bar. I know Christina; she's a great candidate. You were at her campaign launch. She's running for the Alberta Party. Are you planning on helping out or supporting other candidates in other ridings?
Well, I think she's a fabulous candidate, and I really want to see more women elected and more progressive women elected, because the conservative women haven't moved the agenda forward very much, so I really need progressive women, and I think she's a great candidate. At the time I was saying that, and I think still as I'm saying it, you could tell me, actually, there isn't a Liberal nominated there, and frankly, I think she should go and seek the Liberal nomination and do the same thing I did in Gold Bar, because I think she would be great. I'd love to have her in the House.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a Liberal candidate in Gold Bar yet, though I have heard, I think in Calgary there's one riding I've heard where there's a Liberal candidate who I believe has already been nominated, and apparently from what I hear, he's talking with the Alberta Party to get kind of the same nomination. So
that's great.
It's replicated in other jurisdictions. I guess the thing I'm concerned about is in places like Gold Bar, where the Liberals have in the past have traditionally done well. The Liberals did not do well in Gold Bar in the last election, but the NDP did really well, and they came very close to winning Gold Bar in the last election. The same candidate, Marlon Schmidt, is running for the NDs again. Do you think this will impact the chances? I mean, you talk about, your goal is to have more progressives. You'd like to see more progressives elected. The NDs don't want to work in any kind of coalition format with the other parties, but would you still encourage progressives to run against New Democrats for the Alberta Party or the Liberal Party, as their candidates in ridings where the NDP actually have a shot of winning? So we're not talking about too many ridings across Alberta, but there are a handful.
That's part of it, and it's also short game, long game. How long is that candidate likely to be in? Are they older? Are they how many terms are they gonna serve, or do they look like they're gonna serve? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I just could not sit there and go, well, let's just do the same thing that we did before and hope that it'll be different, because it won't be. But I think if we try some different things, we might be able to break the log jam and create some new energy and some new stuff and move forward. But you're right. If there's a really strong ND there, that it might cause a problem. I can't tell, because and my apologies, I don't mean to be insulting, but I've never heard of the guy. And I've usually got a pretty good antenna for that. So,
what about Sarah Hoffman?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, Dave, is there a Liberal nominated there?
In Glenora? Not that I'm aware. No.
Okay. Well, she's very good, and I would, she's got a proven track record, and I think she's got a good ground game. She should win. I expect her to win.
So, Laurie, practically how would this work? If you're re-elected, you said you sit as a Liberal, but you're going to represent the other two parties somehow. So how does that work? Are you worried about that?
Well,
could it come off the rails at some point?
On a couple of subjects. I mean, for starters, a lot of people have talked about, well, what are you going to do about the differences in policy? And there's not that much difference in policy, to be honest. They're pretty similar. There's a few places where there's very distinct differences, like pipelines. But even that is on a continuum. So I find that kind of stuff is much more workable if you actually start working it than if you just stand back and go, this isn't how could you possibly do this? It's not going to work. So most of the policies are much more similar than they are different, for starters. So I don't think there's that much of an issue around policy. But I'm also expecting to be in touch with the Greens and the Alberta Party to touch base with them and see where they are on any particular issue. And maybe they've got an insider scoop, or they've got something that I don't know about that we can make use of in the House. So it's a wider group to be working on, and it's a wider resource base to pull from, frankly. There's probably expertise there that I wouldn't have had access to before. So I don't know how this is going to work, in the sense that I don't know what I have to work with, but I don't see as many obvious problems as others do. Let me give you an example. Every time you go to a group, especially of people that you're talking to them about possibly being candidates, and the first question they say is, what do you do when you disagree with your caucus members? And the answer is, that almost never happens. Because you're a caucus together. You're in there because you're like-minded. You've chosen to run because you share the same things as those people. And I do share, I had no problem signing on to what the Greens have as their value base. It's my value base. I have no problem signing on to that. So, I don't know, I'm not answering this very well, but I just don't see the same problems that everyone else does. They may seem like an obvious gap to an outsider, but I can tell you from inside, that question that everyone sees as so important just doesn't come up in reality.
And I think if I can editorialize a little bit, I think what you're saying is take the step, and if it comes up and it turns out to be an issue, deal with it then, rather than just sit back and say that it's never going to be an issue, or it is going to be an issue, right? So I think that makes sense to me, and I like that action. Ryan, did you want to go next?
Sure. So I realize you're not a current party leader, but if there was on April, whatever the election day will be, if there was a progressive government or a liberal-led government, what would Bill 1 or let's say Bill 1 and 2. What would you want to do with that if given the chance?
Water is a public good. It's a concept of look, I mean, in Alberta, we think of ourselves as having a lot of water, and in some places we do, but actually there's a lot of drought in this province. And we have never come to grips with allocation of water. We've tended to do it on a very archaic, literally first come, first serve. So the water allocations that were given were because somebody stuck a pole in the ground or a stake in the ground 150 years ago. They get priority over anybody that's coming and doing something now and buying the land now. So an old golf course that was established in 1898 has priority over water from someone that is growing food does. And I don't think that's necessarily appropriate, but we haven't given ourselves the policy base to deal with it and the value base to deal with it. So my first bill would be to understand water as a public good, and to roll out your decision-making framework based on that. So that would be bill number 1. Bill number 2 is going to be about coal, because coal is our biggest polluter, and as much as we like to kick the oil sands, that's only because they are growing at such a rate that what they do produce as a greenhouse gas is exponentially increasing. But our biggest producers of greenhouse gases right now is coal. And the government has defaulted to the feds, and the feds have increased the amount of time that our coal-burning electricity plants are allowed to operate. So nobody has to do anything. And, sorry, while I'm on this rant, And then we say, no problem, everyone stay calm. We will just capture all of the greenhouse gases and stuff them underground. So nobody has to do anything different. We don't actually have to adopt any policies to curb what we're actually, where we're creating more greenhouse gases, because we'll just stuff it underground and put a big cork in it, and then it will all be okay. And that is just a very lazy way of looking at both our economy, our contribution to the larger world, and our place in the larger world. So we got to do something about coal, and we do not give enough credit to our oil sands companies and who they employ and what the creativity is there. They're working on stuff all the time. If we ever, as the government, give them a line that they have to step up to, an expectation they must reduce by this amount or whatever, however we want to do that, they will meet it because they're waiting for that. They're ready for it. And of course they're going to push back and say, don't make me do that. I'm going to leave the province. We're going to have to lay off all these people. Of course they're going to say that. That's their job. They're there to make money. They're there to increase the money their shareholders get every year by 15%. That's their job. But if we say, if you're going to stay here, this is what you need to do, they are more than willing to do that. And we're not giving them enough credit for their willingness to step up and do that. So bill number 2 is around coal and reducing the use of coal for electricity. And part of that might be coming at it by taxing stuff that's in coal. I'm thinking methane, as a way, you know, really the only tool the government has to change behavior is incentives and disincentives, usually taxes, but it can be kind of a carrot and a stick. So we need as government to start using those incentives and disincentives to actually move those yardsticks, those goalposts around greenhouse gas production, and coal is the first place to go.
Wow, you're making a lot of sense here, Lori. I just wanted to ask, actually, once you brought up water, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised because usually opposition members would say some sort of accountability or some sort of, you know, grandstanding. Not, that's the wrong word, but how would you structure a water market? Like, would you commoditize it using something like a carbon offset model where it is assigned a value of economic worth? Because we're also going to be looking at an export situation, you know, where Canada and Alberta are sitting on a huge chunk of the world's fresh water, and like any other finite resource, there's you know, economic potential there. So I'm just curious about like how you see it being structured.
Well, that's the point of establishing water as a public good, and that the province's relationship to water is as a public good. It's there as a public good first. So commoditization, no, probably not. The other part is to protect the ecology. So if you're going to keep it going, you're going to have to first look at how do you keep the health of the river system or the water system itself. And one of the largest mistakes that we make is we are a winter province, you know, and our rivers and lakes freeze, and that's when their low flow is. And so a lot of the amounts of water that we allow these traditional water license holders or the newer ones like the oil sands, we allow them to take up a significant amount of water even during low flow, and that is stupid, because you don't, you know, if someone is at their you know, they're not well, they're hibernating or whatever, that is not the time that you go and take away their strength. So the first thing, once we understand that water is a public good and that is the priority of how we do it, then we have to establish what the low flow limits are, and you can't offend that. You can't, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't have an impact upon that low flow. So first thing is protect the ecology and then work from beyond that. And I think you're looking to structure, and I mean, talk to Albertans about this, but you're looking to structure in a way of, well, what is it that we're looking for first? clean fresh water to drink, and then for food, and then for other uses like oil and gas production or however else you're going to use it. But again, we should be looking to minimize the amount that any commercialization of the water, to minimize the amount that any private sector is using it. And oil and gas are wasteful users of water, especially when it comes back unusable, when it's brackish or that it's just toxic. So, did that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Good.
So, unless Ryan has another follow-up question, I just have a quick question from Twitter. We get a question from Jen Burgess, and she's asking you, Lori, what do you think the legacy of the Alberta Advisory Council on Women's Issues is, and is something like this still needed?
Oh my goodness. I worked for the Advisory Council on Women's Issues. I was their one and only executive director for 4 years, and we really did very good work. It was government-appointed women from across the province, and of course, most of them were conservatives. But interestingly enough, a number of NDs and Liberals kind of slid through. And we did very good work on recommendations because our mandate was, what does the government need to do in order to have women participate fully and equally in the life of the province? And we had and we really looked at it from a social justice, a legal, and an economic point of view. And I think it was very useful. And when I'm asked today, would it still be useful having it? Well, given the fact that we've actually gone backwards, that our representation now in 2015 is worse than it was in the 90s, the early 90s, that our wage gap between men and women is worse than it's ever been, that we continue to look upon women as new entrants to the workforce and then throw every possible barrier up for them to participate fully and equally. Hello, childcare. Yes, I think it is still a useful mechanism today. And the government got rid of all of those advisory councils, not because they were not giving good advice and good recommendations, but because they were giving good advice and good recommendations that they didn't want to follow. I mean, it took me 19 years to get this government, a conservative government, to cover midwifery services under healthcare, and they still don't put enough money in for every woman that wants to have a midwife at their birth. So, and yet it saves them so much money. So there's a lot of, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop there. Yes, thank you for the question.
Okay, well, thanks for the answer. I'm sure Jen appreciates it.
Next.
Yeah, Dave, you got another one, or shall I jump in?
Jump in. I'll grab another one.
Okay, let's talk just a little bit more about Bill 10. So you talked about that at the beginning, and I saw, I think online and to the media, you said you were flooded with thank yous. What's the takeaway for you from that whole experience? What's the thing you learned through that whole experience?
There's a lot, actually. First of all, be persistent. It's worth it to be stubborn. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Using social media was an experiment for me, but one that was really important as part of turning this around. And that this is why opposition matters. Because this did not come about because the government was pushing for it. They wouldn't have touched this with a barge pole. They never would have brought this up. And that's why, this is why opposition matters, because it was something that was important to the people of Alberta, and we were able, both Kent and I were able to identify it and then do things to move that agenda forward. For me, it's a way of saying to people, I came into politics to change the world, and I have changed the world. People go, really? What did you do? Well, you know, I got an elevator for the Kiwanis Seniors Residence. That doesn't seem like a very big thing to a lot of people, although it was immensely important to the seniors, I'll tell you. Or, you know, getting midwifery funded, or, you know, a lot of getting heat metering stopped in apartment buildings, which was just a gigantic ripoff for people. There's a lot of small things that I've done over time and influences of policy, but this is one that's obvious and everyone can grasp hold of is, you know, what can you do if you go into politics as someone that wants to change public policy? Is it possible? Yes. Really? Give me an example. Bill 202, Bill 10. So it's an easier one to kind of hang stuff on than me starting to describe exactly what heat metering is and why it mattered that I stopped it. It's just a nice, clean example.
And do you think it will, I mean, obviously it sounds like the hope is that it'll either galvanize others to do similar work or to push ahead another we can do this kind of bit of momentum. Do you think that'll happen? Or is that the hope? You know, whatever the next big issue is.
Yes, I think it will give hope to people that it is possible to do that. And I hope that it will have my colleagues, my elected colleagues, make better use of social media in order to contact with their constituents. And I'm just going to loop back here to remember when I was talking about resources and how there used to be 30 MLAs and now there's 15 of us or 14 of us doing it, I think now. But that's something else that's happened to us. When I started, I used to walk to school both ways. No. When I started, I had one paper annual report that I mailed out. I now have a paper annual report that I'm probably still going to mail out, a website that I have to keep updated, an e-zine that I do about once a month. I have to be personally on Twitter every day and on Facebook every day. So all of a sudden, instead of one form of communicating with my constituents, I have 5. And all of them have to be kept up and done, and they all cost money. And it's just another little piece of how our world got more complex because you're talking to different people through each one of those outlets.
Okay, and just one quick follow-up on that. When you say social media, I mean, obviously you're talking about Twitter. Is there anything else? Like you mentioned Facebook, but are there any other tools that you're finding really valuable, or is Twitter really it?
Twitter's fast. Facebook, you can get longer, you can give more detail and have a longer exchange or give more information in one go. But there's also things like this, and I did, it's totally slipped my mind, but I did do some other sort of open forum things. Oh, YouTube, I'm sorry. I post almost everything I do in the house, and I have for a long time, which has allowed my constituents, it's allowed me to be accountable to my constituents. So if someone brings an issue to me and I get up and table their letter or ask a question or incorporate it into debate, I clip that and then I post it and mail it to them, and they can go, oh, okay, she heard me, she understood me, and she did it correctly. She, you know, or no, she didn't get what I was trying to tell her, and I need to go back to her and re-explain it to her and have her try again. That hasn't happened very often. But YouTube is, you know, people don't like to read stuff, and if they can just watch it in, you know, 2 minutes, that's a lot easier for folks. So I do get a lot of pickup on the YouTubes. I also have a lot of YouTubes out there that 6 people have seen. But those 6 people, it was very important that their grandma saw them on television when I introduced them.
The power of video. Well, if you've been watching with us for the hour, this video will also be up on YouTube, so you can send it to all your friends and they can watch it back. Lori, we're getting toward the end of the hour, and we've been asking you about some serious stuff. We've talked about Bill 10, we've talked about your announcement last week, and so we'd like to use the last few minutes to have a bit of fun and ask you some more lighthearted questions. So Ryan, do you want to kick off?
Yeah. Can you tell me, is the intersection of 102nd Ave and Grote Road in Edmonton Center?
No, it's about a block and a half outside.
Okay, so it's your colleague's problem to deal with then.
Well, it's actually the city's problem. Different level of government, different sandbox, my friend.
So, Laurie, last year, or I guess 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now, when we had the mayoral election, the municipal election in Edmonton, we were doing this Google Hangout. We had Don Iveson and Carrie Diot join us on the Google Hangout, and we had a number of questions we asked them, and one of them, that's kind of the metric, the decision metric for me. I think it's a big indicator for politicians, how they answer this decision, is Star Trek versus Star Wars. What would you choose? What's your favorite?
That's tough.
That's Dave. Hard-hitting questions all the time.
Well, you have to seriously consider that because, there was a certain quirky cheapness that I really appreciated from Star Trek. And I guess you could say that it was more progressive in a lot of ways. They had, certainly in the original series, they had a black woman that was in a position of authority and doing something that was technical and important, integral to the group. And they had visible minority people as part of what they were doing. And as an actor, I appreciated their cheesiness. It's kind of like Doctor Who and the Daleks. It's just like, it's so bad you love it. And I've really enjoyed the newer versions of that as well. So I guess I have to say Star Trek.
That's the right answer.
Okay.
And my second question is it's lighthearted, but it's a little more serious. I guess if you could have lunch with one historical figure, dead or alive, throughout history, who would it be?
Pope Joan.
And who is that and why?
Well, we're not exactly sure, but we're pretty sure that there was a female pope. And if that's the case, I'd be very interested in talking to her.
That's cool. Okay.
And now I'll tell you that I have 4 rescue cats and the most amazing dog in the whole world, who is a wire-haired pointing griffon, and my partner, who is a nice man usually, adopted this monster dog. He was a cute puppy, and now he's 110 pounds of chewing mania, which includes most of my shoes and boots, all of my gloves, hangers, and various other. He ate everything that was digital of Ben's except for his phone. But he ate his golf finder, he ate his TomTom, he really loves wires, and so anything attached to a wire he eats. So there's a little bit of trivia for you.
Oh, I have another one. So there's a bit of a history involving the colors red and green when you think of the Alberta Liberal Party. The green would be more recent. But tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day. So are you going to wear green or are you going to wear red?
Well, it's St. Patrick's Day, so I'm going to wear green in honor of the Irish. I'm actually of Scottish descent, so I don't get as into it as some people do, but no, I wear green to honor the Irish. Red would be very strange. Yeah, no, not red. Not red on St. Patrick's Day.
You could go red and green and celebrate an early Christmas, I guess. Well,
I'm very fond of purple, though. If I got to have my own party, it would be purple.
You can join.
Mayor Nancy and I.
Yeah, you can join with Nancy. That's what I was going to say.
Yep.
You guys would be a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Well, Laurie, we're at the top of the hour, so I want to thank you so much for joining us and answering all of our questions and having a good conversation about everything. We really appreciate you taking the time. And for everyone who's watching, thank you for joining us. We'll be letting you know about the next one of our AB Vote Hangouts at abvote.ca. So thank you, Ryan Hassman on Twitter and ryanhassman.com. Dave, is Dave Cornway on Twitter and daveberta.ca. And myself, Mac Mail, Master Mac on Twitter and mastermac.ca. So keep following at abvote.ca, and we'll see you next time.